A steel fortress weighing 100,000 tons sits locked in a concrete canyon. Workers have spent 4 years building what will become the most powerful warship ever constructed. Then, someone pushes a button. Within hours, 100 million gallons of water rush in like a controlled flood. The massive structure that could not move an inch suddenly lifts off its foundation and floats. This is not science fiction. This is how America brought the USS Gerald R. Ford to life. The USS Gerald R. Ford is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the first of an entirely new class designed to dominate the seas for the next 50 years. But here is what most people do not understand about carrier launches. When you hear the word launch, you might picture a ship sliding dramatically into the ocean. That is not what happens with modern supercarriers. Launch means something far more dramatic. It is the first time this colossal machine floats. The moment when millions of gallons of water flood the dry dock and lift 100,000 tons of steel off the concrete blocks that held it during 4 years of construction. This is not delivery, when the Navy takes the keys. It is not commissioning, when the ship officially enters service. And it is definitely not deployment, when the carrier sails off to defend American interests. The Ford stretches 1,106 feet long, longer than the Eiffel Tower is tall. She carries more than 75 aircraft, including F-35C stealth fighters that cannot be detected by enemy radar, Super Hornets capable of striking targets 500 miles away, and electronic warfare planes that can jam enemy communications across entire regions. 2 nuclear reactors buried deep in her hull generate enough power to run a small city while propelling this floating fortress at speeds exceeding 30 knots. But here is the game-changing part. This platform projects American air power anywhere on Earth, without asking permission from a single foreign government. The answer is simpler than you might think, but the implications are staggering. Older carriers eventually wear out. The USS Nimitz was commissioned in 1975, and even with constant maintenance, steel and systems can only take so much punishment over 5 decades. The Navy needs 11 carriers minimum to maintain presence in multiple crisis zones simultaneously. When one retires, another must be ready. But carriers solve a problem that land bases simply cannot. Air bases require permission from host nations, and that approval can vanish overnight when politics shift. Carriers operate in international waters. That means American aircraft can be positioned 200 miles offshore from any coastline, without diplomatic negotiations, without vulnerable supply lines, and without the complications of foreign politics. Here is what makes this even more critical. Carriers spend most of their time not fighting. They train with allies, respond to disasters, and maintain visible presence in regions where American interests need protecting. The deterrence value comes from readiness. When tensions spike anywhere on the planet, the first question military commanders ask is simple. Which carrier can reach the area fastest? Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia is the only place in America that can build these nuclear-powered giants, and there is a reason for that monopoly. The infrastructure required does not exist anywhere else. Dry Dock 12, where the Ford took shape, measures over 2,000 feet long and 250 feet wide. To put that in perspective, you could park nearly 500 school buses end-to-end inside this single construction basin. Construction does not happen the way most ships are built. The Ford was constructed from the keel up as one continuous structure. For 4 solid years, the ship rested on massive concrete blocks, while more than 5,000 workers installed everything from nuclear reactors to weapon systems. Every pipe, every cable, every compartment was carefully integrated while the ship sat motionless on these supports. Then comes the moment that determines whether everything was built correctly. The flooding process begins. But this is not simply opening valves and letting water rush in. It happens in controlled phases over several days. First, water enters to about 4 feet high, reaching the keel blocks. Engineers monitor every measurement, checking for leaks, verifying seals, and ensuring systems respond exactly as designed. Here's where it gets critical. As more water floods in, the carrier begins experiencing forces it has never felt before. At some point, physics takes over. The ship, weighing as much as 230 fully loaded Boeing 747s, suddenly becomes light enough to float. If anything is wrong with the hull, this is when it reveals itself. If weight distribution is off, the ship will not sit level in the water. On October 11th, 2013, Susan Ford Bales, daughter of President Gerald Ford, pushed the button that started this process. Hours later, the carrier floated successfully for the first time. The water was then partially pumped out so the ship could rest on its blocks again for the christening ceremony. Nuclear power changes everything about what carriers can do. Those two A-1B reactors do not just propel the ship, they generate massive amounts of electricity that power advanced systems older carriers could never support. The Ford can operate for 25 years without refueling and remain at sea as long as food supplies last. But here is the revolutionary part. The Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, known as EMALS, represents the biggest leap in carrier technology since steam catapults appeared in the 1950s. EMALS uses powerful magnets to accelerate aircraft down the deck, launching everything from 80,000-pound strike fighters to lightweight drones with a level of precision steam systems cannot match. The system recharges faster, allowing the Ford to generate 25 to 33% more sorties per day than previous carriers. The ship requires 700 fewer sailors than older carriers thanks to automation. That translates to $5 billion in savings over the ship's 50-year lifetime, just from reduced crew costs and more efficient operations. Now here is what nobody expected. The $13.3 billion price tag came with serious challenges. The electromagnetic launch system initially failed far more often than designed. Weapons elevators malfunctioned. Testing revealed problems that delayed operational readiness by years. But here is what matters. By the first deployment in 2023, these systems had proven themselves with more than 10,000 successful launches. One carrier fundamentally reshapes military options across entire regions. The Ford positions 75 aircraft within striking range of targets, hundreds of miles inland, while operating safely in international waters. That is more combat power than most nations possess in their entire air force. And it is mobile. The carrier does not need to fire a shot to be effective. The fact that it could launch immediate strikes often prevents conflicts from starting. During the Ford's first deployment in 2023, the carrier logged more than 10,000 sorties and sailed over 80,000 nautical miles. When Hamas attacked Israel, the Ford was rushed to the eastern Mediterranean within days. The deployment was extended 76 days because commanders needed that firepower in the region. This timeline reflects how complex modern carriers are. You do not just build a ship and send it to war. Every system must be tested, every crew member trained, every scenario rehearsed. The launch proved construction worked. Everything after that proved the design could perform its mission under real operational conditions. The moment the USS Gerald R. Ford lifted off her keel blocks and floated for the first time marked more than construction progress. It proved America's commitment to maintaining naval superiority for the next half-century. It is the most expensive warship ever built, and the launch was not the end. It was proof that the future of American naval power had begun.